At 50, people often assume you've slowed down, that your best days are behind you, that your body is something to manage, not master. But I've learned the opposite. The truth is, I'm more alive, more grounded, and more powerful now than I've ever been. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened through discipline, discomfort, and an unwavering respect for how the body and brain work together in balance. These 12 truths I've learned aren't just about staying lean, they're about staying awake in your own life. I used to chase quick results, just like everyone else. Diet fads, extreme workouts, endless supplements. But what I've learned is that the real transformation doesn't come from what you add, it comes from what you're willing to give up. Comfort is seductive, pleasure is easy, but the brain doesn't grow stronger through ease, it grows stronger through resistance. The first truth is this: comfort is the enemy of vitality. Every time you choose short-term relief, scrolling, snacking, skipping, you trade long-term strength for momentary escape. I've also learned that being lean isn't about deprivation, it's about alignment. You can't punish yourself into health, you can't hate your body into change. The real shift happens when you start listening deeply to what your body is asking for. Not the cravings, not the dopamine spikes, but the quiet signals: hunger, fatigue, energy, recovery. I learned to treat my body like a living conversation, not a machine to control. That's when everything changed. Movement became sacred. Not a punishment for eating, not a means to an aesthetic end, but an act of gratitude. Some days my workouts are intense. Other days I walk slowly, breathe deeply, and let my thoughts settle. But I move every day, not because I have to, but because motion is medicine. The brain is designed for movement. Stillness was never meant to be our default. Another truth: what you consume consumes you. Food, media, information. It all shapes your brain's reward circuitry. In a world engineered to keep us hooked, staying lean and strong means defending your attention as fiercely as your appetite. I had to detox, not just from sugar or alcohol, but from noise, constant input that left me overstimulated and emotionally drained. The more I simplified, the clearer I became. Then there's sleep, the unsung hero of every transformation. You can eat clean, train hard, meditate daily, but if you don't sleep, you're fighting biology. I stopped glorifying exhaustion. I started honoring rest. Because strength isn't built in the gym, it's built in recovery. The hardest truth: aging demands humility. You can't out-train time, but you can walk beside it with grace. Every wrinkle, every scar, every ache tells the story of a body that's lived fully. I don't chase youth, I chase vitality, mental clarity, emotional steadiness, physical presence. That's real beauty, that's real power. And I've learned to befriend discomfort, to sit in the cold shower, to fast when I want to eat, to say no when my impulses say yes. These small acts of discipline build something priceless: dopamine balance, self-respect, resilience. We live in a culture that tells us happiness means constant pleasure. But the paradox is this: happiness is born from the ability to tolerate pain. Connection is another truth. Health isn't a solo pursuit. We need each other: family, friends, community. Loneliness is one of the most toxic states for the human brain. I stay lean not just through what I eat, but through what I share. Laughter, touch, empathy, these are nutrients too. Purpose keeps me going. Without a reason to get up, no habit lasts. I don't chase perfection, I chase meaning. I train so I can serve, so I can be present, so I can keep contributing to a world that desperately needs more people awake to their own potential. So, after 50 years, this is what I know. Your body is not your enemy. Your brain is not your obstacle. Both are extraordinary allies if you treat them with respect. You don't need more hacks or secrets. You need truth, consistency, and courage. The courage to face yourself honestly. Getting lean and staying strong is not about defying age. It's about mastering it. It's about choosing presence over distraction, discipline over comfort, balance over chaos. You are not done at 50. You are just beginning. Because the moment you decide to live intentionally, every cell in your body listens, lean, strong, and limitless. It's not a destination, it's a daily choice. And the beauty is, you can make that choice today. Discomfort is not the enemy, it's the teacher. We live in a world that tells us to avoid pain, to seek comfort, to make life easier at every turn. But what if that very comfort is what's keeping us small, tired, and disconnected from our potential? I've learned that the path to strength, physical, mental, and emotional, runs straight through discomfort. The human brain is not wired to thrive in constant ease. It's designed to adapt through challenge. The paradox of growth is that the very thing we run from is the thing that saves us. Every time you avoid discomfort, your brain learns a dangerous lesson, that you cannot handle life as it is. You reinforce fragility instead of resilience. You dull your inner power in exchange for temporary relief. But when you lean into discomfort, when you deliberately expose yourself to effort, hunger, or challenge, you rewire the brain's reward system. You tell your nervous system, I can do hard things. And over time, that becomes your identity, someone capable, disciplined, and free. The modern world is full of hidden dopamine traps. Sugar, screens, constant stimulation. They promise relief but deliver depletion. Every click, every bite, every binge floods the brain with dopamine, that neurotransmitter of pleasure and motivation. But the brain, in its wisdom, wants balance. For every spike of pleasure, it creates an equal dip in pain. This is the dopamine balance Dr.Anna Lembke speaks about. The seesaw between pleasure and pain that governs our emotional health. When we chase too much pleasure, the system compensates by lowering our baseline happiness. We feel restless, numb, and unmotivated. The antidote is not to seek more pleasure, but to allow space for discomfort. Fasting, exercise, cold exposure, deep work. These are not forms of punishment. They are forms of recalibration. They teach the brain that meaning is not found in constant satisfaction, but in effort and endurance. The pain that comes from doing something difficult is not the same as the pain of addiction or avoidance. It's productive pain, pain with purpose. I learned this through experience. There was a time when my habits were shaped entirely by comfort. I reached for food when I was tired, for my phone when I was anxious, for distractions when I felt bored. Each small escape chipped away at my sense of agency. I didn't realize that every act of avoidance was training my brain to fear discomfort. The turning point came when I began to understand that the moments I resisted most, the moments of craving, fatigue, or frustration, were opportunities to build strength. So I started small. I practiced delaying gratification. When I wanted sugar, I waited 10 minutes. When I felt the urge to scroll, I sat with the feeling instead. When I woke up tired, I trained anyway. These tiny acts of defiance against comfort changed everything. They taught me that discomfort is temporary, but the confidence that comes from mastering it is lasting. The science backs this up. Controlled exposure to stress, what psychologists call hormetic stress, activates growth mechanisms in the brain and body. Exercise breaks muscle fibers so they can rebuild stronger. Cold exposure triggers endorphins and reduces inflammation. Fasting improves metabolic health and increases mental clarity. In the same way, emotional discomfort builds psychological resilience. When you tolerate distress without escaping, you strengthen neural pathways of self-control and patience. The more you face discomfort, the more your brain learns that it is safe to do so. This isn't about seeking suffering for its own sake. It's about embracing challenge as a teacher. Discomfort doesn't mean danger. It means growth is happening. When you lift weights, your muscles burn. When you study deeply, your brain protests. When you tell the truth, your heart races. But in those moments, you are expanding your capacity for life. Avoidance keeps you stuck. Discomfort sets you free. The body and brain crave balance, and discomfort restores that equilibrium. When we indulge constantly, the dopamine system dulls, and nothing feels rewarding anymore. But when we restrict, when we practice self-control, when we earn our pleasure, the system resets. Joy becomes sharper. Satisfaction returns. A simple meal tastes rich again. A good night's sleep feels profound. The world becomes alive once more. There's another layer to this, meaning humans are built to struggle for something. When life becomes too easy, it loses purpose. Discomfort gives life texture. It anchors us in the present moment. Think of the clarity that comes after a long run, the pride after a hard conversation, the stillness after a cold plunge. That's the nervous system, returning to balance, stronger and steadier than before. We often think freedom means comfort, more options, fewer limits, but the opposite is true. Real freedom comes from discipline. When you can face discomfort without fear, you become unshakable. You no longer need external comfort to regulate your mood. You generate stability from within. That's true strength. So if you want to be lean, strong, and limitless, start by rethinking your relationship with discomfort. Instead of avoiding it, court it. Start small, skip a meal, take a cold shower, put your phone down when your brain screams for it. Each act of resistance is a quiet revolution, a reclaiming of your mind from the forces that want to keep you passive. In time, discomfort becomes familiar, even welcome. You begin to crave challenge, to see effort as beauty, the body adapts, the mind clears, and life feels sharper, more vivid. Because discomfort at its core is not suffering, it's the signal of transformation. It's the evidence that you're alive, awake, and growing. So step toward the hard things. Let them shape you. Every time you lean into discomfort, you're not just building strength, you're building freedom. And that freedom, once earned, is the most powerful feeling in the world. Pleasure without purpose is one of the greatest traps of our modern world. Everywhere we turn, we are surrounded by invitations to indulge, to eat, to scroll, to consume, to escape. It's effortless, instant, and always available. But beneath the surface, something subtle and dangerous begins to happen. The more we chase pleasure for its own sake, the less we actually feel it. The highs become shorter, the satisfaction duller, and the emptiness deeper. The brain, wired for balance, begins to rebel against constant stimulation. What once brought joy now feels like a burden. The human reward system is a masterpiece of evolution. It's designed to motivate us to seek out what sustains us. Food, connection, achievement, love, every surge of dopamine, the brain's pleasure chemical, is meant to reward meaningful action. But dopamine was never designed for the modern world, where rewards come at the tap of a finger. We no longer have to hunt, build, or wait. Pleasure is instant and endless. The result is a dopamine system in overdrive, spiking constantly, crashing often, and slowly burning out. When pleasure becomes the goal instead of the reward, it turns toxic. We eat not because we're hungry, but because food is there. We check our phones not because we need information, but because we crave the tiny jolt of novelty. We chase validation, not connection. And every time we do, we strengthen the loop of dependency. The pleasure fades quickly, but the craving remains. This is the paradox of indulgence. The more we feed it, the hungrier we become. I've seen this not only in others, but in myself. There were seasons in my life when I mistook pleasure for peace. I thought that a good meal, a successful day, a few likes online would fill the void inside me, but they never did for long. The moments of pleasure were real, but they were fleeting, followed by a quiet unease, a sense that something essential was missing. It took years to understand that what I was missing wasn't more pleasure, but more meaning. Pleasure without purpose feels good for a moment, but it leaves you hollow. Purpose gives pleasure its depth. The difference between the two lies in intention. When you eat to nourish, not numb, the same meal tastes different. When you move your body to celebrate its strength, not punish its shape, exercise becomes joy. When you rest because your body needs healing, not because you're escaping effort, rest becomes restorative. It's not the act that changes, it's the reason behind it. Purpose transforms fleeting pleasure into lasting fulfillment. The brain itself responds differently when purpose is present. Dopamine released in pursuit of a meaningful goal behaves differently than dopamine released from mindless indulgence. When you're working towards something, whether it's learning a skill, improving your health, or deepening a relationship, your dopamine cycle includes both the pursuit and the reward. You experience not only pleasure at the end, but motivation along the way. The effort becomes part of the satisfaction. But when the reward is instant, when you get the hit without the hunt, the system short circuits. You feel pleasure briefly, then drop into a state of pain and craving. Over time, that imbalance erodes motivation itself. We can see this everywhere. The endless scroll of social media gives us connection without conversation, validation without intimacy. Junk food gives us taste without nourishment. Streaming gives us entertainment without engagement. It's not that these things are evil. It's that they're empty when used without purpose. They mimic the reward without the work, and our brains can't tell the difference until it's too late. The more we indulge, the less joy we feel from simple things. There's a deep sadness in this cycle. The very things meant to make life pleasurable end up making it flat. We become restless, overstimulated, and numb. We chase more pleasure to fill the void that pleasure itself created. It's a loop with no exit, Unless we remember that pleasure was never meant to be the destination. It's the byproduct of living in alignment with meaning. Finding purpose doesn't mean rejecting pleasure. It means restoring balance. It means understanding that discipline and restraint are not enemies of joy, they are its guardians. When you delay gratification, when you earn your pleasure, you make it sacred again. The simple act of waiting, working, or choosing intentionally restores the natural rhythm of the brain's reward system. That rhythm, the rise, the fall, the rest, is what gives life its texture. I began to experiment with this idea. Instead of reaching for instant comfort, I started to ask, why? Why am I eating this? Why am I watching this? Why am I checking this? Most of the time, the answer wasn't hunger or curiosity. It was boredom, anxiety, or avoidance. Once I saw that clearly, I could choose differently. I could sit with the discomfort instead of smothering it with pleasure, and something remarkable happened. The small, ordinary joys of life began to return. A walk in silence, a meal shared slowly, a conversation without distraction. These became rich again, because when pleasure is rare, it's radiant. When it's constant, it loses its meaning. The world will always offer easy highs, quick fixes, and endless options. But the question isn't how much pleasure you can have. It's how much meaning you can create. Every time you choose purpose over impulse, you reclaim a piece of your freedom. You teach your brain to find joy in process, not just payoff. You rediscover the quiet satisfaction of earning something, building something, becoming something. Pleasure without purpose is like fire without heat, bright but empty. Purpose gives it warmth, direction, and power. So stop chasing what feels good in the moment and start pursuing what makes life feel right in the long run. Pleasure isn't the goal, it's the echo of a life lived with meaning. When you live that way, even the smallest moments, your breath, your body, your being, become beautiful again. Your body is not a project to control. It is a living, breathing conversation that speaks to you in sensations, rhythms, and emotions. For most of my life, I misunderstood this. I treated my body like an object, something to shape, to push, to perfect. I measured it, judged it, and punished it when it didn't perform the way I wanted. I followed every new diet trend, every workout program, every biohack that promised quick results, but none of it worked for long because I was missing the most fundamental truth. The body doesn't need to be dominated, it needs to be understood. The human body is astonishingly intelligent. It knows how to heal, how to adapt, how to balance itself, if only we would listen. But in a culture obsessed with outcomes, we've forgotten how to tune in. We eat because the clock tells us to, not because our body asks. We sleep when our schedule allows, not when our body begs. We move for aesthetics, not for vitality. We silence signals with caffeine, sugar, and distraction. The result is disconnection. A mind that ignores the body and a body that stops trusting the mind. I used to think that being lean and strong meant control. Restricting calories, pushing through fatigue, ignoring pain. But control without connection is just another form of resistance. You can't fight your way into balance. The more I tried to dominate my body, the more it rebelled. I felt constantly tired, anxious, and unsatisfied. Even when I looked healthy on the outside, my body wasn't the problem, my relationship with it was. The turning point came when I started to view my body as a partner instead of an opponent. I began to listen, to hunger, to soreness, to the signals I used to dismiss. Hunger, I realized, wasn't an enemy to suppress, but information to interpret. Fatigue wasn't weakness, but wisdom, a quiet reminder to rest. Pain wasn't punishment, it was communication. My body was always speaking. I just needed to stop shouting over it. Listening to the body requires patience and humility. It means slowing down in a world that glorifies speed. It means noticing the subtle cues, the way your energy shifts after certain foods, the heaviness that comes after hours of sitting, the calm that follows deep breathing. The body is constantly giving feedback. It's up to us to respond with respect. When we do, the relationship transforms. Eating becomes nourishment, not negotiation. Movement becomes joy, not obligation. Rest becomes healing, not guilt. There's science behind this too. The brain and body are in constant conversation through the nervous system, hormones, and the gut-brain axis. When you ignore your body's needs, you disrupt that communication, leading to stress, inflammation, and imbalance. Chronic stress floods the body with cortisol, dulling hunger cues, impairing sleep, and fueling anxiety. But when you attune to your body through mindful eating, regular movement, deep rest, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural state of repair. This is not philosophy. It's physiology. Being lean, strong, and limitless is not about restriction. It's about rhythm. Every system in the body works in cycles: the heartbeat, the breath, the sleep-wake pattern, even cellular repair. When we honor these rhythms, we thrive. When we override them, we suffer. I used to skip meals, stay up late, and push through exhaustion because productivity felt more important than presence. But the truth is, a body out of sync can't perform at its best. When I began to align with my natural rhythms, eating when hungry, sleeping when tired, moving when restless, I found energy I didn't know I had. Listening to the body also means embracing discomfort when it speaks. We often label any unpleasant sensation as a problem to fix, but not all discomfort is bad. Hunger before a meal, muscle soreness after training, or even emotional tension are signs that your body is adapting and recalibrating. Ignoring them means missing out on growth. Learning to sit with these sensations teaches you to distinguish between true pain and the growing pains of transformation. Over time, I began to see my body as a mirror of my inner life. When I felt tightness in my chest, it was usually stress. When my digestion was off, it reflected anxiety or distraction. When I felt constantly drained, it wasn't just physical, it was emotional depletion. The body keeps the score of our choices, our thoughts, and our emotions. Every neglected signal adds up until it forces us to listen through burnout, illness, or injury. But if we cultivate awareness early, we can prevent breakdowns before they happen. What's remarkable is how quickly the body forgives, even after years of neglect. When you start listening, truly listening, it responds with generosity, better sleep, steadier mood, more energy, deeper clarity. It's as if your body had been waiting all along for you to return home. The healing doesn't come from supplements or secrets, it comes from reconnection. Now, when I train, I do it from a place of gratitude, not punishment. I move because movement is medicine. For my muscles, my brain, and my spirit, I eat foods that make me feel alive, not restricted. I rest when I need to, knowing that recovery isn't laziness but wisdom. And I speak to my body kindly, because every word you think is a signal too. The body listens to the language of the mind. We spend our lives trying to master our bodies, but real mastery looks more like partnership. It's the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your own rhythms, respecting your limits, and trusting your instincts. The body doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful. It needs to be heard. If you want to stay lean and strong at 50 or at any age, start by ending the war with yourself. Stop fighting hunger. Stop fearing rest. Stop numbing discomfort. The body you have is not broken. It's brilliant. It's been trying to communicate with you your entire life. When you finally start listening, you'll discover that everything you've been chasing, energy, peace, balance, was never outside you. It was in the conversation all along. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of awareness. For years, I thought productivity was the measure of worth. The more I did, the better I felt. At least that's what I told myself. I filled my days with tasks, noise, and endless momentum, believing that motion equaled progress. But somewhere along the way, I lost the ability to be still. I didn't know how to stop without feeling guilty. Rest felt like weakness. Silence felt like failure. It took me decades to realize that stillness isn't a pause in living. It's the space where real living begins. We are raised in a culture that worships action. We equate busyness with purpose, output with identity. The result is a generation of people who are constantly moving but rarely arriving. Our minds are crowded, our bodies restless, our attention fractured into 1,000 pieces. We multitask through life, chasing an endless list of goals, yet we rarely ask what all that striving is for. We're overstimulated and underconnected, to ourselves, to others, to the moment in front of us. The tragedy is that we've confused motion for meaning. I didn't understand the cost of this until my body began to rebel. I was tired but couldn't sleep. I was wired but unfulfilled. My nervous system was on high alert all the time, even when I wasn't working. My mind was racing, scrolling through to-do lists, replaying conversations, anticipating the next demand. I was living in survival mode, powered by cortisol and caffeine, and mistaking adrenaline for aliveness. But the truth is, constant stimulation numbs us. It blunts our sensitivity to joy, gratitude, and peace. The human brain wasn't designed for this level of noise. It evolved for cycles of activation and rest, for moments of effort followed by recovery. When we deny ourselves stillness, we disrupt that balance. We overload our dopamine systems, flooding them with constant novelty, and then wonder why we feel anxious and unsatisfied. Stillness, in contrast, restores that balance. It resets the brain's reward circuits. It allows the nervous system to exhale. It is not emptiness, it is recalibration. When I began to practice stillness intentionally, it felt unbearable at first. I would sit in silence and my mind would erupt in noise. Memories, worries, guilt, ideas, cravings. I realized how addicted I was to distraction. My mind wasn't used to being with itself without something to do or fix, but slowly I learned to stay. I learned that the chaos wasn't a sign of failure, it was detox. My nervous system was unwinding years of overstimulation. The more I allowed myself to be still, the clearer things became. Thoughts settled. Emotions surfaced. The noise quieted. Underneath it all, I found something I hadn't felt in years: presence. Stillness is not passive. It's an active form of engagement with life. It's where awareness deepens, where insight emerges, where the body heals. In stillness, you begin to hear what's actually going on inside you, the fatigue you've ignored, the tension you've buried, the emotions you've suppressed. The body speaks in whispers, but we drown it out with distraction. Silence gives it a voice. And when you start listening, you can make choices from clarity instead of chaos. Science affirms this. Studies show that moments of quiet reflection activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for rest, digestion, and healing. It lowers heart rate, reduces inflammation, and enhances focus. Meditation and mindfulness literally rewire the brain, increasing gray matter in areas responsible for emotional regulation and empathy. Stillness doesn't make you weaker. It makes you more resilient. It's the space where the mind integrates experience and the body restores equilibrium. In our dopamine-driven culture, we crave constant input: music, podcasts, screens, stimulation. But the brain needs contrast to function properly. Just as muscles grow through cycles of contraction and relaxation, the mind grows through cycles of engagement and stillness. Without rest, there is no renewal. Without silence, there is no depth. When you begin to honor that rhythm, your energy changes. You stop burning out and start burning steady. You stop reacting to life and start responding to it. Stillness also teaches humility. It strips away the illusion of control. When you stop doing, you're forced to simply be, with your thoughts, your flaws, your truths. At first, that can be uncomfortable. Stillness exposes what busyness hides: insecurity, grief, longing, fear. But facing those truths is the first step toward healing. Avoidance keeps wounds open. Attention begins to close them. The moments we resist most, the quiet, the solitude, the slowing down, are often the moments our soul needs most. What's powerful is how stillness transforms action. When you emerge from silence, your movements carry more intention. You stop doing for the sake of doing. You act with clarity instead of compulsion. Your decisions become cleaner. Your focus sharper. Stillness refines motion. It turns reaction into response, chaos into calm power. That's why the most grounded people are often the most effective. They act from centeredness, not frenzy. There is a deep connection between stillness and strength. Physical training teaches this too. The strongest athletes aren't the ones who move the fastest, but those who know how to control their energy, how to pause, breathe, and reset between moments of exertion. The same principle applies to mental fitness. You can't stay strong without rest. You can't stay focused without quiet. Strength is not sustained by pushing harder, but by recovering wiser. Now, stillness is part of my discipline. I treat silence like a daily nutrient. Some days it's 5 minutes of breathing before sunrise. Some days it's a walk without my phone, just listening to the world. Other days it's sitting in total quiet, doing nothing, and realizing that nothing is not empty, it's full of life. Those small pockets of stillness have become my anchor. They remind me that I don't need to chase meaning. It arises naturally when I stop running from myself. In the end, stillness is the foundation of everything we're striving for. Clarity, balance, focus, strength. It's the counterweight to a world that never stops spinning. When you learn to be still, you reclaim your power from the noise. You realize that peace isn't something to find, it's something to allow. Stillness builds power because it brings you back to yourself. And from that place, every action becomes more intentional, every word more meaningful, and every moment more alive. Discomfort is not the enemy, it's the truth teller. The body whispers through unease long before it screams through pain. And yet most of us are taught to silence those whispers. We reach for distractions, comforts, and quick fixes to avoid the sting of discomfort. But here's the paradox. Everything meaningful in life, growth, strength, discipline, and even joy emerges through a certain threshold of discomfort. It's the space between what's easy and what's unbearable that shapes who we become. For much of my life, I misunderstood discomfort. I treated it like a warning sign to turn back rather than a signal to pay attention. When something felt difficult, whether it was a craving, a hard conversation, or a physical challenge, I assumed it meant something was wrong. But the truth is, discomfort is a teacher. It's the body's way of saying, here's where the edge is, here's where you grow. Once I started to reframe discomfort not as punishment, but as data, everything changed. We live in a culture obsessed with comfort. We have temperature-controlled environments, food on demand, entertainment at our fingertips, and instant gratification in every direction. We've engineered inconvenience out of our lives, and in doing so, we've weakened our resilience. The moment something feels even mildly unpleasant, we look for an escape route. We scroll, we snack, we shop, we numb. But the cost of constant comfort is profound. It dulls the mind, weakens the body, and disconnects us from reality. It creates a fragile nervous system that panics at the first sign of distress. Our ancestors didn't have that luxury. Their lives were filled with natural discomfort. Cold, hunger, uncertainty, effort. They didn't have to go looking for challenge. Challenge was the default. But that discomfort shaped their strength. It forged patience, resourcefulness, and adaptability. In our pursuit of convenience, we've lost touch with those survival systems. We've forgotten that the body needs stress to grow stronger, muscles atrophy without resistance, the mind stagnates without challenge. Even joy loses its sharpness when it's never contrasted with hardship. When I began deliberately leaning into discomfort, I started small. Cold showers, early mornings, fasting, speaking truth, even when my voice trembled. Each act of discomfort became a microdose of strength training for my mind. I realized that discomfort doesn't destroy you. It expands your capacity. It teaches your nervous system that you can survive difficult sensations. The first time I sat with the urge to quit and didn't, something shifted inside me. I stopped fearing the feeling. I began to see discomfort as the price of growth, not the obstacle to it. Neuroscience supports this. When we expose ourselves to manageable doses of discomfort, we activate systems in the brain that build resilience. Controlled stress, what scientists call hormetic stress, triggers adaptation. It strengthens the prefrontal cortex, enhances dopamine regulation, and improves emotional regulation. It's the same mechanism behind physical training. When you lift a weight that's heavy but not impossible, you damage muscle fibers just enough for them to rebuild stronger. The same happens with the mind. Emotional resilience grows in the gap between stress and recovery. The key is intentional discomfort. Choosing it consciously, rather than being victimized by it. When you choose your challenges, you train your brain to stay calm under pressure. You expand your window of tolerance. The next time life throws something hard at you, and it will, you're not thrown off balance. You've built the internal muscle to withstand it. That's what real freedom looks like. Not a life without discomfort, but a nervous system that's no longer afraid of it. There's a deep psychological power in this. When you avoid discomfort, you reinforce fear. You tell your brain, I can't handle this. But every time you face it, even in small doses, you rewire that belief. You prove to yourself that you can do hard things. Over time, that confidence bleeds into every area of life. You start to speak more honestly, take more risks, and chase goals that once intimidated you. You stop shrinking from the edges of your own potential. The irony is that most of our suffering doesn't come from discomfort itself. It comes from resisting it. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. When we resist reality, when we fight against what is, we multiply our pain. But when we surrender to discomfort, when we allow it to pass through us instead of running from it, it loses its power. The storm quiets. The fear softens. What remains is presence. This is not about glorifying hardship or seeking pain for its own sake. It's about recognizing that the path to meaning runs through moments of challenge. If you avoid discomfort, you also avoid transformation. Comfort zones are seductive. They make us feel safe, but they also become cages. Growth begins where comfort ends, when you stop running from discomfort. You start meeting yourself. Some of the most fulfilling moments of my life didn't feel good in real time. They were messy, uncertain, and full of resistance. But they were also the moments that broke open new layers of strength I didn't know I had. That's the paradox of discomfort. It feels like dying, but it's actually rebirth. Each time you stay present through the fire, something false burns away, fear, ego, doubt, and something truer takes its place. Discomfort teaches us humility too. It reminds us that control is an illusion. No matter how well we plan, life will still deliver chaos. The question is not how to avoid it, but how to meet it. The more comfortable you become with discomfort, the less you need life to be perfect in order to feel okay. You begin to trust your own adaptability. You stop demanding ease and start cultivating strength. Now, I treat discomfort as a compass. If something makes me uneasy, it usually means it's worth exploring. Whether it's a new habit, a difficult conversation, or a deeper level of honesty, discomfort points me toward truth. It's the boundary between who I am and who I could be. Every time I cross that boundary, I become more whole, more grounded, more free. The most extraordinary lives aren't built through constant pleasure or comfort. They're built through the courage to face what's uncomfortable again and again until it no longer controls you. Discomfort doesn't shrink as you grow, you just become bigger than it. That's the real transformation. Not escaping discomfort, but expanding your capacity to hold it with grace. When you learn that lesson, you stop chasing comfort and start chasing truth. And that's where real strength begins. Discipline is often misunderstood. Many think it means restriction, rigidity, or self-denial. We imagine a life of harsh schedules, joyless routines, and constant deprivation. But discipline, at its core, is not punishment. It is the deepest form of self-respect. It is the conscious act of choosing what serves your long-term well-being over what offers immediate gratification. Every act of discipline, no matter how small, sends a signal to your brain: "See, I matter, I am worth investing in, I am capable of honoring my own life." This is the kind of internal conversation that transforms not just the body, but the mind, the heart, and the soul. For many years, I mistook comfort for freedom. I would eat what I wanted, sleep when I felt like it, scroll endlessly, and surrender to impulse because it felt easier, lighter, and more pleasurable in the moment. But I discovered that what feels easy is rarely liberating. Each choice to indulge without intention slowly eroded my sense of agency. I didn't realize it at the time, but every concession to immediate pleasure was a small act of self-betrayal. The cost isn't always obvious at first. Perhaps a little extra weight, a restless night, a twinge of anxiety. But over time, the accumulation becomes profound. Discipline is what stops that erosion. It is the daily act of affirming that your life, your body, and your mind deserve consistency, care, and respect. Discipline is not about extremes. It is not about punishing yourself for what you ate yesterday or how you feel today. It is about showing up consistently for yourself. I've learned that discipline is most effective when it is built on small, intentional choices repeated over time. Skipping a second dessert, saying no to the scrolling binge before bed, taking a walk instead of collapsing into a chair. These seemingly minor decisions are the bricks that build resilience. They create a structure for your life that your future self can rely upon. Each act of self-control, no matter how small, compounds into strength, clarity, and confidence. One of the most powerful aspects of discipline is how it intersects with freedom. We think of discipline as constraining, but in reality, it frees us. The brain is designed to seek short-term rewards, which often conflict with our long-term goals. Without discipline, we are enslaved to impulses. We chase fleeting pleasure, trading meaningful outcomes for temporary satisfaction. But when we cultivate self-control, we reclaim choice. We no longer react automatically, we respond intentionally. Discipline allows us to direct our energy, focus our attention, and act in alignment with our highest priorities. In essence, discipline turns freedom into something tangible, the ability to live according to our own standards, rather than the demands of immediate gratification. Discipline also teaches patience. The brain craves instant results. Muscles want to appear overnight. Cravings want to be satisfied immediately. The mind wants to feel relief instantly. But meaningful change rarely happens in a single day. Weight loss, strength, mental clarity, and emotional resilience are all products of steady, consistent effort. Discipline is the mechanism that allows delayed gratification to become possible. It helps us tolerate the discomfort of effort and the frustration of slow progress, because we understand that every small discipline choice is a step towards something greater. Another aspect of discipline is integrity. Every act of self-control reinforces trust with yourself when you honor your commitments to yourself. Whether it's waking early to exercise, preparing nourishing meals, or meditating, you strengthen the belief that you are reliable, capable, and worthy, that trust becomes the foundation for every other area of life. Without it, even the most brilliant strategies for health, productivity, or happiness will falter. Discipline is the internal scaffolding that holds your life together. When external circumstances are chaotic or uncertain, discipline is also profoundly liberating, because it shifts the source of reward from external to internal. In a world saturated with stimulation and distraction, we often look for satisfaction outside ourselves, through food, entertainment, or social validation. These are fleeting, external dopamine hits that fade quickly and leave us restless. But discipline cultivates a deeper, more sustainable reward. The quiet satisfaction of honoring your values, aligning your actions with your intentions, and proving to yourself that you can do hard things. That sense of accomplishment cannot be outsourced. It is self-generated, reliable, and enduring. The practice of discipline requires courage. It is easy to follow impulses, to seek comfort, to prioritize convenience. But each moment of self-control is an act of bravery. It is a refusal to let momentary temptation dictate the course of your life. Over time, that courage becomes habitual. You learn to meet challenges without panic, to resist impulses without anxiety, and to hold your boundaries without guilt. Discipline transforms fear into confidence, chaos into order, and indecision into clarity. Perhaps the most important lesson I've learned is that discipline is deeply compassionate. It is not about shaming yourself for weakness or failure. It is about showing up consistently, even when you stumble, even when progress is slow. It is about treating yourself as someone worth the effort, the way you would treat a friend you deeply care about. Each act of discipline is an expression of love for yourself. It is a daily reminder that you are worthy of respect, care, and intention. When you live with discipline, everything else aligns. Your energy becomes steadier, your mind clearer, your habits stronger. You feel less reactive, more intentional, more capable of achieving goals that once seemed distant or impossible. Discipline allows you to cultivate lean muscles, mental resilience, emotional balance, and a sense of purpose simultaneously. It is not a restriction, it is a liberation. It is the foundation of freedom, strength, and limitless potential. In the end, discipline is not about perfection. It is about presence, integrity, and persistence. It is the ongoing commitment to honor your own life, body, and mind. Every choice you make in alignment with your values strengthens your capacity to thrive, to endure, and to flourish. Discipline transforms fleeting effort into lasting transformation, comfort into mastery, and intention into reality. It is the invisible architecture of a life well lived, the quiet, relentless force that separates fleeting ambition from true accomplishment. When you embrace discipline in this way, you discover that the life you've been seeking, lean, strong, resilient, and limitless, is not a distant dream. It is built moment by moment in the simple, consistent acts of self-respect. Discipline is not a punishment. Discipline is love in action.